do this. Okay. Well, I'll get started. Welcome everybody to the second program in the Summer Scares series for Syosset Public Library's Summer Scares virtual literature festival celebrating horror, dark fantasy, and all of that good stuff. My name is Jessica. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist here at Syosset Public Library, and with me I have from the library.
Venture. I'm a reader services librarian and a fan of horror, fantasy, thrillers, and even romance.
So we are here to have a virtual lunch with Sarah Beth Durst, who is a Long Island person, which is awesome. Last night we had drinks with Josh Mallerman, which was interesting and fun. But just a few housekeeping rules before we get going. This is a fun, friendly event. Any semblance of hate speech, racism, or abusive language will have you booted from the meeting, which is definitely not why we're here. We are here to talk to Sarah about The Bone Maker, which you can't see with my, there we go, that's much better.
Cool background.
A fantastic dark fantasy. There are ways, this is in webinar mode. There are a few ways you can engage with us and with Sarah. You can either enter a comment or a question in the chat next below. I'm going to put something in here that's going to prompt the chat to come up. Or you can add something to the Q&A box, and Stacy and myself will address it to Sarah. This is fun and conversational, and we're really excited about this. So without any further ado, because you're not here to watch us talk, I am going to put the spotlight on Sarah Beth Durst, and I'm going to let her talk about The Bone Maker. So here we go.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I am Sarah Beth Durst. I'm a writer. I write lots of books. My newest one is The Bone Maker. It is, as Jessica said, an epic fantasy standalone. It is about second chances. It is set in this world where there is bone magic. And 25 years ago, these 5 heroes saved the world. They defeated the big bad, they saved the day. They thought their story was over. This book takes place 25 years later when they discover their story is definitely not over. It centers around Kreia, who is the leader of this group. Her husband was one of the other warriors, one of the other champions, and he died 25 years ago during this battle, and she has been seeking a way to bring him back. And that's where it begins and what it's about. And I had so much fun writing it, and I'm so happy it's out in the world. And thank you for coming and talking to me about it. So there you go.
We have a guest from Texas. Hi, Patrice from Texas. Welcome. The beauty of virtual programming is you can literally come from anywhere.
I have loved that. I've gotten to talk to so many people that I would normally not be able to see, and usually see their pets, which is always very fun. I love meeting everybody's cats and their dogs. Actually, this one time I was doing a virtual book event, and my cat was not napping. She was on me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the one with the cat this time. And I come in, and there's another woman there, and she has a live owl sitting next to her. I'm like, all right, I lose.
What?
Oh my God, my sons would be so jealous of that. But before we talk about cats and pets, okay, we can do that. We were doing that beforehand. Sarah, if anybody has, like I said, if anybody has any questions or comments, please put them in. We love audience participation. I can start off by saying first of all, thank you for making heroes of a story who were kind of like middle-aged. As somebody who reads a lot of fantasy and has read a lot of fantasy throughout my life, you know, when you're a kid or a teen, you see yourself, your Katniss Everdeen or your Harry Potter or your Percy Jackson age, but then like once you approach your 30s, you don't see much of that. And as somebody who's like in her 40s now, it was such a breath of fresh air. Do you want to talk a little bit about Kreia and her husband and just this whole idea of taking heroes 25 years after the big battle?
Yeah, that was something I really wanted to write about. I write a lot about heroes, and a lot of my books, there's this common thread of what does it mean to be strong? What does it mean to be a hero? What are different ways to be the kind of person that can save the world without changing who you are? And I really wanted to write about people that weren't taking that first step. They took that first step a long time ago. And it's 25 years later, and they bear the wounds of that. They did not come out of this battle unscathed. They're in a very different place. Their friendships are in a very different place. They haven't seen one another in 25 years. What does that do to them? What does it do to their relationship? How do they step up and be heroes again when they think that they're done? They think they've done it before. The curtain should have closed. I mean, I'm a big believer in that stories don't end after that climactic moment. No, our stories go on. So I really wanted a story that was middle-aged people going out there and doing something important to just say to readers, it's not over. If you didn't get your letter from Hogwarts, it's okay.
It makes me think of The Last Unicorn.
Oh, I love that book. And the movie.
The book and the movie are both fabulous, but there's one thing that I got more as I got older, which is like there's a part where there is a middle-aged female heroine in that story, Molly Grew. Sorry, I'm looking. There's somebody named Maggie in the audience, Molly Grew, and sorry, Maggie, and there's a point where the unicorn comes to her and like her fool husband has just ran off after an illusion, and she's been cooking rat stew for them, and she's just very jaded, and she looks at the unicorn and she's just like, damn you, why are you here now when I'm this and not when I was this young maiden who believed in all of this magic? And when I was a kid, I was like, oh no, she's yelling at the unicorn. And now when I'm a grown woman, I'm like, yeah, Molly, you tell her.
It was so great writing about characters with that much history too, because I really love writing backstory. I love building up people and seeing who they are. And taking people that had that much history and making them real was really a lot of fun, and seeing how their relationships change. I mean, all these people have massive history with each other, and when they re-encounter one another, how have they changed? How do they mesh who they used to be with who they are, which I think is something that all of us deal with. Like, you run into somebody that you knew as a child or as a young adult, and you're like, who I am has changed, who you are has changed. How do I mesh my memory with who we are now? How do we proceed forward with a relationship if we want one? Do I still like you? Do you still like me? All of those layers made it really fun as a writer to play with and really explore. And I really wanted to write about characters who are not the chosen ones, but have fought to be where they are and who they are.
Yeah, and I think, Chosen One stories are, I don't want to say they're so done, but they have been done forever, like forever. And okay, talk about the magic system in this book, because it's kind of necromancy, isn't it? Oh, we have a question.
Ooh.
Oh, and I should show you guys. So we have this tradition, whenever I write a book, my husband buys me a necklace to go with the book.
Oh,
so this
awesome.
is the one for Bone Maker.
Love it.
It's a bone hand. I also have skull earrings.
Oh, that's amazing.
This is the Bone Maker necklace. So the magic in the Bone Maker is all about bones. I actually had the idea for it because I had written on a Post-it that I really wanted to write about a character who had a coat with lots of pockets, because I was really annoyed with my jeans because the pockets are like so small I can't even fit my phone in it.
Oh.
My character is going to have a lot of pockets. And then I asked myself, okay, so what's in her pockets? My brain instantly answered bones, which probably says way more about me than anything else. So I started growing this magic system based on bones. And in this world, there are 3 types of magic that you can work with bones. You can be a bone maker, which is you use bones to bring to life these constructs. It's sort of like steampunk, but bone punk. You can be a bone wizard, where you carve into the bones to create these talismans that imbue you with a certain attribute, like speed or strength, depending on what kind of animal it came from. And the third kind is a bone reader, where you can predict the future by the tossing of the bones. And then I built the whole world out of those 3 magic systems. But the one thing that you can't do is you cannot use human bone. That's a taboo you can't cross, which of course one of the characters instantly crosses.
Stacy, want to take the audience question?
Yeah, we have a question from Patrice. She asks, how do your heroes approach heroing now that they are older and sadder and wiser?
They approach it knowing what can be lost. You know, with a lot of young heroes, they don't know what the cost is going to be. These characters know full well because they have paid that cost. And they are not really all that happy about taking up this mantle again. They paid already. It's someone else's turn now, especially since their body creaks a lot more than it used to. They can't quite do the things they could. One of them is their mind is not what it was. One of them is happily married with children and does not want to leave them or endanger them, but also wants the world to be safer for them. So and that's the thing. They not only know what the cost is, but they know what there is to lose if they fail. So it's that awareness that these characters bring to it when they choose to be heroes. They know what they're choosing. They're not just falling into it randomly or with some shiny idea from the ballads. In fact, they hate all the ballads that were written about them. They think they were very cheesy. And they're not really looking forward to more ballads about them. So they go into this with their eyes open. And I think that's what makes the biggest difference between them choosing to be a hero and a younger character choosing.
What I'm curious about is, because you say that it's 25 years later, I feel like in most fantasy books that do that, it's either like a short time span later, like 5 years, maybe 10, or it's like a millennia has happened, like centuries. So what made you choose like 25?
I went back and forth on the number of years for quite a while, actually. There are many drafts where I changed. I'm like, what's a reasonable number of years? And then I had to map out, like, okay, what's actually happened? How old is everybody? What are they doing? Where are they? I wanted it to be enough time that it's begun to fade into legend. You know, the people that tell the stories now, you know, the pain of it has begun to fade, yet everyone still knows someone that was affected by the war that happened. You know, it's not so distant. So I wanted that enough time has passed that people have moved on and think that it's all over, yet, you know, you can still run into somebody that was like, oh, I remember the last time that this army of undead machines and bone creatures tried to destroy everyone. The memory is still there, but it's not fresh. So that's why I picked 25, because, you know, 25 years after college, you still remember it fondly, but like, not every day. And what courses did you take? And I'm not sure, who did you know? Like, who are you? So I wanted that fuzzy memory amount of time.
Yeah, it's very, actually, it's so realistic to think of it that way, because as we pass, you know, like you think about, for instance, my parents were of the age of the Vietnam War, and you'd hear about it a lot as a child, but the farther you get away from it, it becomes more distant. And before that, their parents were World War II, and you know, like it makes me think of a line from there's this line from a song that's like something like I was shocked that the mistakes of each generation fade, you know, when we're out of range. And it makes me, whenever I hear stories like this, like you were just saying, it makes me think about that. You know, and people tend to think that once the quote unquote big bad has been defeated, that's it. But there really is, what is it? Another Peter S. Beagle quote from The Last Unicorn: "There are no happy endings because nothing ends."
Yeah. I really wanted that. Yeah, that feel of what happens after. I've been reading fantasy my entire life. You know, I feel like my bookshelves are opposite me, and it's filled with like girl with sword, girl with talking wolf, girl with dragon, girl with unicorn, the whole thing. And I love epic fantasy. And I would always wonder, well, what happens after? What happens to these people later? Do they get their happy ever after? And what does that mean? What does that look like? What are their lives later? And that's a story I wanted to write. I mean, we all know the story of the defeating the big bad, but we don't know always how that affects them later and what they do later in life, and how they find who they are and their future after their destiny is fulfilled.
Yeah, I think like it's funny. There's been the only other book that is there another question? No, okay. The only other book that I've read, I think recently, which deals with the Chosen Ones after the fact is Chosen Ones. I don't know if you read Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth last year.
No, I haven't read it
But
yet.
they were in their 20s, and that was you know, it was a more of a contemporary fantasy in that like you would see the tabloids talking about one of the characters, you know, being like, oh, she's unapproachable, and you know, like things like that. But I wonder, like all of us who were brought up on a steady diet, of that is sort of, you know, like we need these stories.
Yeah,
I like what you said. It's you know, realistic. You have a character that's now like you, not like the teen or even young adult, like, you know, like entering in this. Because I feel like you brought up there's not a lot of middle age, Jessica, but to me, I was like, some of the fantasy, the epic fantasies I've read, I'm like, oh, they're all like, you know, middle aged older men. And I'm like, where are the ladies?
Right? Yeah. I mean, I also wanted, you know, if there's a teen reader, a young adult reader out there reading it, be like, okay, I don't have to save the world right now. There's still time. So I tend to write with a lot of hope. I don't write, it's dark fantasy, but it's not grim dark. If you don't read it and you're like, oh, people are horrible and the world is doomed. No, I don't write those kinds of stories. I write ones with the thread of hope that runs through it. You know, these people really do love each other. They care about each other. There's a lot of banter in it, which I adore writing. I usually have one draft where I'm like, is this too much snark or should we just keep going?
It's great.
I mean, I believe humor is such a basic coping mechanism in life. I'm deeply suspicious of books that don't have it. And that's how people deal with things. That's how you cope. You know, you have this giant sort of velociraptor running after you, and I call them crocoraptors because they're sort of this giant river lizard creature. You kind of have to joke about it or you're just going to cry and get eaten. So they choose to joke and not get eaten. So
We do have a question in the chat. Jessica, did you want to take it?
Yeah, I can. So the question is, Kreia this is actually speaks very much to what you were just talking about. Kreia is grieving her husband, but keeps bringing him back, which by the way is not a spoiler. It's like literally the first thing she's doing. And Gent, I believe it is, am I pronouncing it correctly?
It's written down. You can pronounce it however you want.
He's one of the heroes that fought with him. So Maggie says Kreia is grieving her husband, but keeps bringing him back. Why did you decide to make that part of her story?
That's mainly her main goal. Is she lost her husband and did not let go, and it's caused her to step into a very gray area of forbidden magic, all the way over into the not so gray, that's actually forbidden, please don't do that kind of thing. So I invented this magic. You're forbidden from using human bones, and she's discovered if she uses human bones in this particular spell, she can bring them back, but at cost. And the cost is for however many days he lives, she will live that many days less. And I thought that was such an interesting question of what would you give up to bring back someone. So that cost of it is something she has to answer for herself. And the reason that it is forbidden is because it's such a great cost with this great chance of being abused. So I kind of like to set my characters the biggest question to answer in the story. Now, one of the things that when I'm developing them, I try to decide is what do they most want and what do they most fear? And I make them have to deal with that because I think that's the most interesting journey is, and I think that's a thing that fantasy in particular lets you explore. I mean, it's really, fantasy is like the extreme sport of literature because You get to take a theme or an idea or a concept and take it to the absolute extreme of it. Really explore what it means to be a hero, or to love, or to let go, or to, face your past, or revenge, or whatever thing that you're exploring. You get to do it in a truly extreme way because you're shaping a world that isn't bound by the physical rules of our world or the history of our world or anything that exists. You get to shape it around whatever playground you want to play in.
Got this one, Stacey?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, when you were talking about, the cause, all I can now think about is Rumpelstiltskin / Mr. Gold from Once Upon a Time, that like magic comes with a price.
Yes. I love that show.
Yeah, and I just think it's really cool that you address that, because I feel like some people gloss over it, like it's just something like small, like, yeah, we're not going to touch upon that, like, yeah, it happened, okay, but it's something that happens.
Yeah.
We have a question from Vicky. She says, was Elcor based on any specific villain type, and what do you think makes a good villain?
That's such an excellent question. I try not to base my characters on anything in particular, because I need to see them, they need to feel real to me in order for me to write them. And I think the best villains are the ones that see themselves as the heroes, the ones that feel that they are doing the right thing and that their reasons are good enough to justify whatever it is that they're doing. So I really spent a lot of time thinking about what would make him tick, what would make him do these terrible things that he chooses to do, and be okay with himself when he's making these choices. I do think in fiction, when you're writing, one of the things that you can do is put two characters in a room and have them want different things. They don't necessarily both have to be hero or villain, and you can blur where the line is of who decides who's the hero and who's the villain. But if they want different things, you've got a story.
That's interesting you say that, because there's a book both Jessica and I read. To me, it's more sci-fi, even though it has fantasy elements, of Hench by Natalie Zena Walsh.
Oh my God, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The audio, but I was just like, you're saying, the villain that has this is what I'm doing, and she addresses that with stuff that goes on, because it's contemporary of this woman who works as a temporary hench person for a villain, and what escalates with all that. But also, Vicky, just to plug in another program, later this summer, for kind of part of Summer Scares, we do have a writing workshop of how to make.
Oh yeah, that's true. How to write creating a villain. Yeah, that's true. I completely forgot about that. So
it just popped in because it was like, what do you think makes a good villain? It's a good question, because there's so many different types of villain.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. I mean, I enjoy the ones who think that they're right, that are strong in their conviction that the world has wronged them and they have the right reason to do everything, and all of their choices are logical. But you can also go with the mustache twisting kind of villain, and that can be fun in a particular story too. I mean, there's no real right and wrong way. Honestly, the only writing rule that I would say you cannot ever violate: don't be boring. That's it. Every other rule you can break.
I got this one. Vicky says, why 5 heroes?
Because if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons,
yes, 5 heroes.
When I began thinking about the story, I really wanted to begin with that kind of feel. We've got, the leaders, sort of paladin kind. We've got the warrior. We've got the bard, the wizard, the cleric. We've got that troop. And I wanted to take that troop, make them into real people, and age them up 25 years. So 5 was a very deliberate number for that reason.
Stacey and I, not only do we play Dungeons and Dragons, and I know for a fact at least one person in this group does, because I've done programs and they've been there. Yeah, we love Dungeons and Dragons, and in fact,
like Dungeons and Dragons.
I do not. I desperately wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid, and I had the books, but I didn't encounter other people that wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. And if you don't encounter somebody that has a clue what they're doing, it doesn't go well.
That's so funny because we just had a question in the chat. What's your choice for a D&D character?
If you were to play now, who actually I'll piggyback on that. When you were younger, who did you want to play, and has that changed now that you're older?
I wanted to be a wizard because I've always really wanted magic powers. I mean, I think that's a large part of why I became a writer, is because you get to basically have magic powers, and that you're trying to create worlds and cast a spell over people to welcome a story and characters that don't exist into their hearts. So I often think that being a writer is kind of the closest you can get to being a wizard, because you're trying to create this moment of shared telepathy with your words. So I think that's who I would have picked. Probably would be who I'd still pick, although Bard is awfully tempting if it came with like the ability to sing, which I kind of don't have and would like. So also tempting. How about you guys? Who do you guys play?
So I normally play an elf when I've played in the past, and usually I make her, because I make a female character just because I am female. What do I usually make them? Like some sort of like noble type, cleric, wizardy type, because it's just, I'm like, oh, this is cool. However, in the one that we're playing now, I've never played was it Other Folk, Jessica? Whatever.
Yeah, the one that we're Bard all the way, Ching. Yeah, the one that we're playing now. Yeah, I don't think there's one. I think that the caveat that the DM put out was no human characters.
Yeah, so I'm a rat folk rogue, because I was like,
That's amazing.
I was like, what's something that I do not know at all? Like, I'm not sneaky, or like I don't hide. Like, I'm just like, what am I not good at? Let's go with that.
And I play a cat folk witch. I tend to play characters. And actually, I'm going to take this audience question next because it kind of fits with what we're talking about. I tend to play characters that kind of like to annoy the rest of the players. So usually that's sort of sorcerer elf, but now my character now is like a very spacey cat type person, which actually talks to your whole talking cat thing.
You're making it come true.
Yeah. And she's constantly like very new agey in the stereotypical, like, oh yeah, you're Aura, and nobody in the party knows whether she's serious or not, and she frequently plays Stacey's character's whiskers. So
yes.
Awesome.
Stacey, want to read the question?
Yeah. So Maggie asks, what qualities do you think make a good hero?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends. I think empathy is the key thing, is caring about other people. That one I think is necessary. The rest aren't necessary. It's kind of up for grabs. Like, I write kids books as well, and one of those, wait, I'll grab it, I'll show you, is, ooh, you're not pretty. I love that cover. So Spark is about a girl and her telepathic talking friendly dragon. It's set in this world where people can control the weather. And the whole thing I was playing with, if you can see the top, it says even the quietest voice can change the world. And it's about a quiet girl who bonds with this dragon. And I really wanted to write about somebody quiet that doesn't learn how to be loud, but that she learns that she is strong enough exactly as she is, that she can change the world without changing herself. So I really think it's not required to be strong or brave or any particular characteristic you think of when you think of like Odysseus or classic heroes, Prince Charming or whatever. I think to be a hero is you have to care and you have to do it anyway. I think those are the two requirements.
Maggie puts on to that, and do you think that one of your characters are more heroic than others?
I definitely tend to write about characters who like do things that I wish I could do, like say the things, characters that think of the cool, funny thing to say on the spot instead of, like me 3 days later when you're like, I should have said that. I like writing about characters who are brave and fearless and, not afraid of heights and slightly more coordinated than I am. and things like that. I mean, one of the wonderful things about writing fantasy is you get to go to all these places and do all these things that you would never, ever in a million years do. Like, I write about riding on dragons and flying and all these things all the time, but honestly, I get car sick. Me on a dragon would probably not go well, and the dragon would probably hate me by the end of it, but I love writing about it and I love imagining it. So my heroes, my favorite heroes, are the ones that do things that I want to experience as I write them, and the ones that make me laugh, the ones that make me care about what they're doing and who they are, and root for them. I firmly believe that you have to fall in love with your characters and you have to love what you're writing. I mean, anybody out there that's writing, I'm sure, has heard the adage, write what you know, but I really believe it should be write what you love. And I try to write the story that I want to read.
That's great advice. We have, oh yeah, this is a question. For a second, I thought it was just a comment. Vicky asks, Zara seems to cope by dwelling in the legend of herself. No?
Ooh, that's really insightful. Yes. She does. Yeah, they all have different coping mechanisms, some of which work and some of which do not work as well. Zara is the bone wizard. She's the former best friend of Kreia. They haven't seen each other in about 25 years. And Zara is not happy about it, but she's formed a very successful life and become extremely wealthy and extremely powerful through her bone wizard magic. And she revels in her role as a former hero and isn't quite sure she wants to leave that comfortable life. But in her heart, she hasn't really let go of everything that's happened to her before. She's got unresolved issues. She was also so much fun to write because she's totally over the top melodramatic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading her too. I think like there's always that's something that I like just in general in my fantasy. Like you were talking about, like the humor, and in horror even, I like having some humor in my horror. Like it has to be there. For instance, like Shaun of the Dead and zombie. Like if I'm gonna watch a zombie something or other, I can't. It can't just be like you were saying, like, oh, doom, doom, doom. It's got to be somewhat funny because I know there's like all of these theories about social commentary and zombies, but also they're like literally like they move at a snail's pace. There's probably snails that pass them. It's kind of funny and horrifying at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't know why this just kind of struck me, like sometimes because people don't know how to process grief, and for Kreia it's bringing her poor husband back. Sometimes people, like, their emotions almost get mixed and like they'll laugh and it's because they're uncomfortable. So what are you reading that you enjoy? And if anybody has any other questions or comments or wants to tell us what they're reading that they enjoy or what character in D&D they play, please drop it in the comments or the Q&A.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I actually just read the newest Murderbot Diaries book by Martha Wells. Have you read those?
I haven't, but it's been recommended a ton.
Oh, it is fantastic. You wouldn't think books called Murderbot would be charming, but they are just absolutely charming. They're just delightful. The voice of the character is, it's about this, Murderbot. It's science fiction, and the main character is essentially a cyborg, part human parts and robot parts, and not treated as human, and has this great disdain of humans, and it's just hilarious. So I love that. Also read The House in the Cerulean Sea by Teach. I'm looking across at my bookshelf.
Everybody's talking about that one.
That's so beautiful. That it reminded me of the Ransom Riggs peculiar. Oh, I forget the title.
Miss Peregrine.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
It's like that for adults, but it's sweeter. No, it's that's another one that's like super charming. Every little sentence is like, oh.
We have somebody who says tiefling all the way, ranger, chaotic, neutral. Oh, here we go. Patrice says, I'm rereading the D'Artagnan romances, and they are very apropos because they are all about the musketeers after the first book, and now they're in their 50s, older and cynical. It's great because they're also heroes.
I have not read those. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll put it on the list.
I like that. I didn't even know that they existed, so thank you, Patrice.
Yes.
Let's see. I've been reading a lot, mostly horror lately. But let's see. Well, I just read Josh Malerman, Goblin, which is very creepy and unsettling in the way that Josh Malerman does very well. I read The Bone Maker. Final Girls Support Group by Grady Hendrix, if you're into the Final Girls.
That's a great title.
He's very funny. Like, if you want horror and humor, he's your guy. I don't know if you're familiar with any of his books.
No, I haven't.
My Best Friend's Exorcism.
But he wrote a book which is like his first book, Horror Store, is basically like an IKEA catalog with a story about a haunted IKEA, and each chapter the IKEA trinkets become darker.
Yeah. Like the book literally looks like the chapter, beginning of the chapter shows, like, you know, as if you're looking at something to buy in IKEA. Very entertaining.
That sounds amazing. I love that. I think my current favorite horror writer is Christopher Golden.
Oh, yes.
I haven't read his newest ones, but the newest Red Hands, I think, is the new one. But that series, Ararat, I think, is the first one, and I'm blanking on the names of the other ones, but they're really good. They're a lot of fun. Very suspenseful. I tend to try to be careful about which horror novels I read because I get very vivid nightmares.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I read one of my books, my creepiest book is called Conjured, and while I was writing that book, I could not go down into the basement while I was writing it. So
you freaked yourself out.
I freaked myself out, yeah, I did that.
We were doing a promotion video for Summer Scares of what we're doing for the library, and because, you know, with the pandemic and being safe and everything, we've been doing different rooms and socially distancing. So I was like, oh, I'll go into one of the side rooms in our basement. But to get there, you have to, you know, unlock the door, which is fine. But there's a hallway and it's dark and the room is dark. And then you have an exit sign, so it's just red. And I took a screenshot because I'm on a Zoom call ready to like talk to Jessica being like this. And I'm like, okay, this looks like I'm about to be murdered or something's about to, like, you know, scoop me in another dimension. Because you just see me with my mask on, like I'm walking like this, dark red. I was like, oh, this is creepy. This is something doesn't happen.
Yep.
Good question, Maggie. Good question.
Maggie says Le Bardugo. And then,
did she do Shadow and Bone?
Yes, I guess for the second.
I was like, I didn't read the books. I watched the Netflix.
Yeah, I loved in the Shadow and Bone Netflix. They combined the characters from Six of Crows.
Yes,
in the same world, and it balanced it so nicely. They really did an excellent job of adapting it. It was a lot of fun.
Would you want to see one of your series to be optioned for TV?
Yes. Why, yes. Actually, one of my books, Strengths I Love, was turned into a TV movie, and it was the most fun thing. We had a party when the premiere came out, and everybody bought vampire themed, it's a vampire book. It's about a girl who is stabbed through the heart by a were-unicorn and starts developing a conscience and is really not happy about this. And so everybody bought like donuts with like vampire teeth in the holes and like little eyes, and like brownies with bite marks and like raspberry sauce. And anyway,
That sounds
it was
delicious.
very fun. And there is other Hollywood stuff going on that I'm not allowed to talk about. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Exciting.
Oh, Stacy, did you get this one? Did you want to get this one?
I didn't ask it, but
Go for it.
Vicky wants to know, where can we see that adaptation?
You can get it. Oh, they have it on iTunes. Get it through iTunes.
Okay,
It's called
cool.
Drinks They Love. Yeah.
Nice.
There are links on my website too. So if you forget what I said it was called.
Let me drop your website in the chat so people can find it. And while that's going on, so what did you read? We talked a little bit about that you were always a fantasy person. As far as like scary stuff goes, like, were you a fan when you were a kid?
I was always a fan of fantasy, more adventure than scary. I went more for the can I ride this dragon or bond with this talking horse than how scared can I feel type of thing. I wanted to feel brave in my stories. I actually got asked not that long ago in an interview, how have your reading tastes changed now that you're a grown up? And I was like, they were supposed to change? Like,
Yeah.
Nope. I still have all the same books. I love the kind of book that when you get to the end and you close it, you feel like the world is a little more magical than it was before, and that you feel that you are stronger than you thought you were. Those are the kind of books that I have always been drawn to. The ones that can sweep you away, the ones that are an escape. And I mean that in the best of ways. I mean, people use the word, oh, it's just an escape book or it's a guilty pleasure. And that drives me crazy because there is so much value in escape. It gives you a breath. It gets you to walk in someone else's shoes and try on different adventures and different ways of being you and different ways of seeing the world. And then to come back, safe and sound and maybe slightly changed. And I think that's a wonderful and important thing. So
I think that there's like something that you said in there that kind of reminds me of some research I did recently. I did a little research about Michael Ende, who wrote The Neverending Story, and also Momo, which is a book everybody should read. I'm so annoyed that like this book did not get as big as, say, A Wrinkle in Time, because I feel like it's a natural companion to it. But I did like some research into him, and he was super grumpy, and I think rightfully so, about being like, well, you just write children's books. And he was like, I write books for children 8 to 80. Like, why do we look down upon something because we think it's childish? Like, that's not great.
Yeah, I've never really understood that too, especially if you ask somebody what was your favorite book when you were a child, their eyes always light up. There's always some book that touched their heart. Even if they're not readers now, there's always that book that went into shaping who they are. And if there's something out there that can shape who a person is, how can it be unimportant?
So somebody, what is it? Maggie said in the chat, why is genre fiction looked down upon?
I don't know, but it is. I mean, there's a lot of sort of, oh, that's childish. That has a talking cat. It can't be important. It can't be serious. Oh, but comedy gets that too. You don't see comedies nominated for Oscar awards, even though you can have a comedy that is wonderful and makes people feel something. It can enter their heart. It can change minds. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about stories, is they can change people. You can talk directly to somebody's soul and to their heart. I don't think it should be looked down on at all. So I'm a great proponent of books good, read more.
Yeah, I think like for myself and, just thinking about like horror and fantasy, I think, when I was younger, I was a reluctant reader, and now I'm a librarian, and I talk about books all the time, and I read like 5 books a week. But the book that really got me interested in reading was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe first.
Yeah.
Because I love I loved, just you were saying, like, you can be an ordinary person and you are now in this fantasy world, and but then at the same time with horror, because I was a huge wimp.
Me too, Jessica. Me too.
Such a wimp. I loved scary stories to tell in the dark, but I was so afraid of it too. But I think like almost like having that fear was it enticed me to eventually read them and discover urban legends and the fact, like there's like some history in that. So yeah, it's like like something being dangerous almost makes it more enticing.
Yeah, well, it gives you a safe space to explore danger, a safe space to go and feel that thrill. It's like, being on a roller coaster that has working seatbelts. Much better than being on a roller coaster that does not. So
yeah. Oh yes, which is why when the parking lot street fairs that open up, I don't know, like wherever anybody's coming from, I don't know if this is a thing in other areas, but Sarah, you know, and Stacy, on Long Island when it's summer, there are a million of these little carnivals that open up in parking lots. And you just kind of have to. I think like the allure of them is that maybe they are a little dangerous.
You do. You look at some of those rides and you're like, does it have all the screws in there? I don't know.
Yeah, but I would personally, like, if I'm gonna go on a fast ride, it's gonna be at Disney, which is very aware that if anything goes wrong, the entire Disney reputation is on their head. So it's not that nothing's ever gone wrong at Disney, but if it does,
but they know what to do.
Yeah, their PR team is going to be working overtime, and they do not want that. No. Maggie wants to know if you're writing anything now.
Always. Yeah, I write every day.
That's great.
Pretty much for the majority of the day when I'm not eating. Those are my 2 favorite things, writing and eating. So it's what makes me happy. I mean, and this is not to say if anybody out there is writing, you don't have to write every day. That doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me because A, it makes me happy, and B, it keeps the momentum of the story going. My next, one of the things I'm doing is preparing for my next book coming out. June 15th is my next book for kids. It's called Even and Odd. It's about 2 sisters who share magic on alternating days. And there's also a unicorn named Jeremy. And I am right now revising my next book for kids, which will come out in 2022, which is called The Shelterlings, and that has more talking animals in it than you can possibly guess.
I have to ask, and I'm probably reading it wrong, but Jeremy isn't based on The Secret of NIMH, or the Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH, right? The crow that was Jeremy.
No, I don't remember the crow named Jeremy.
Oh my gosh, you have to go back and
it's been a long time.
Yeah, that's another movie that both I think like that and The Last Unicorn, they were both very beautiful fantasy, but they were also terrifying at times.
Also traumatizing. Also, Never Ending Story, the scene in the Swamps of Sadness, that will make me cry just thinking about it.
Fun fact about that, because I mentioned I just did research about Never Ending Story. So recently, for Syosset Library, we have a podcast called Turn the Page, and we spoke with Sarah Marshall, who's a podcaster. She does You're Wrong About and Why Are Dads. We interviewed her a while ago about You're Wrong About, and then started talking on Zoom about terrifying children's movies like The Never Ending Story. And then we recently just released an episode with her where we basically went hashed out all of the trauma, and there's so much that happened behind the scenes to the actors, and also to the either listen to the podcast or look it up because it's nuts. to the author, Michael Ende, who like he hated the movie, and it's tough for me because the movie itself was the first thing that was the first thing that I experienced of it, and I love the book too. And knowing his background now, I understand why he. I mean, it's even without his background, it's his prerogative to not like the product of, but it's very personal to him because a lot of it is based on his experiences in World War II, being a German child. But you'll be happy to know Artax was not hurt in that production. That horse was trained to be put in the water, but Noah Hathaway was hurt during the production.
Really?
So check that out, or just do some research about it. And there's also an American cut and a European cut, which have different sound.
Did not know that.
Did not know that at all.
I'm done. I'm going to pull back on that rabbit hole and say, the movie, and like thinking about this in The Bone Maker, because this takes place after a war, which really like, it was emotionally draining on the population. With The Neverending Story, I was like 6 when I saw that for the first time. And my parents came to Syosset Public Library and were like, ooh, fantasy movie. We need some time to ourselves. We're going to put this in the VHS machine and leave our daughter upstairs with it. And that is like the biggest mistake, because it was so heart-wrenching, but it was also the first time I think I experienced any story where right off the bat you knew it wasn't safe. Yeah. You knew that the journey was going to take something from you. And sorry, I'm done.
No, that's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, I mean, the stories do, they ask for a bit of your heart, they ask for a bit of your soul, they ask you to go someplace that you might not be comfortable going, and I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah, and there's and also, and then I'll get off my pedestal, like one thing, just like looking back on it, is just like the way that you experience grief in that movie. And it's a little boy, like in the 80s, little boys, you weren't supposed to cry. You weren't supposed to care if your horse drowns, and there was so much little boy crying in that movie, and being the mom of little boys. Yeah. Okay, Stacey, take it away from me, please.
I will take your soapbox away, but it's a good one, and I like listening to it. We do actually have a question from Vicky. She asked, would you write more in the world of The Bone Maker? Are you able to talk about that?
Well, I perceived it as a standalone. I really, I'm not planning to. That's not to say that I never will, because I love the characters and I love the world, but I really wanted to write a standalone epic fantasy. There's lots of trilogies, lots of endless series in fantasy, and I love those because you don't have to say goodbye. But I really wanted that feel of a complete journey in the book as well. And so that was one of the challenges I set for myself. I intended to have an ending in it when I went into it. So I don't have any immediate plans to go back to it, but never say never, so who knows?
That's exciting, because when I first thought, I was like, oh, cool, like a series. And I'm a big fan of like fantasy type series or trilogies. Like I laugh because I love, one of my favorite genres is romance, and I love Nora Roberts. But this is where like people are like, oh, you've read all her stuff. And I'm like, I've read most of it, but I read her like magical trilogies of, romance and fantasy and witches and all magic. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, she writes that. And I'm like, what?
They're cool. I like those.
And so I'm like, I like that, but I also like, where you said like you have this ending, because sometimes I'm just like, oh, there's more to the story, and I love that, but like I don't have time to keep going in this series. Or like one of our coworkers, we have like an unofficial Dresden Files book club going on where we're all at different books in the series, and our coworker has already like lapped us twice of reading the series, but she's like, you'll never know, the having to wait for the next book. And I'm like, that's true. I don't. Or at least it's not like George R.R. Martin, who's like, I don't even know if he's ever writing that last book, but that's a whole other thing.
Maggie wants to know, if you want to get into writing, where do you begin?
Writing. I know that sounded totally flippant, but I'm completely serious. You learn to write by writing. But the thing is, I highly recommend not sitting down and saying, I'm going to write a novel today, because that's completely intimidating. I would sit down and say, I'm going to write this moment, and no one is ever, ever, ever going to see it. I'm just playing, and trick yourself into writing. Choose a small piece. Like if you're interested in dialogue, or if you're interested in a character, you just have an idea, just go for it. See what happens. Set aside, 15 minutes. You don't need like a full day. You don't have to wait till you have free time, because free time is totally a myth. Steal 15 minutes. Write a moment, and then do it again the next day and the next day. You write enough moments, you have a full story.
That's great advice.
Yeah. Oh, there's one more question, and we are about to finish up. And I want to thank everybody so much from wherever you are for joining us for lunch or coffee or second breakfast or anything at all.
Second breakfast is the best.
But yeah, one of my sons has discovered that term, and it's his favorite thing ever now.
I literally love the lifestyle of hobbits.
Oh yeah, I'm in favor of that.
What's one recent book that you wished more people knew about?
Okay, now my brain went totally blank of everything I've ever read. No.
Welcome to the world of a librarian. Can you recommend a good book for me?
Right. Most recently, and this just came out, River Magic by Ellen Boreum. It's a middle grade book, and it was just so sweet and wonderful. And it was one of the things that kids' books can do is they can be silly and sincere at the same time, and that book does that. Also, it's got a cool telepathic dragon, so
Oh man, I know. Before we close out, once again, I want to thank everybody for being here. Do you have? Oh, did somebody just raise their hand?
Someone did, but I don't know who it was.
I don't know if that was a goodbye. If that's a goodbye, goodbye. Thank you. Or if you have a question, put it in. But I want to thank Sarah Beth Durst for joining us virtually, probably from like a few miles away. But maybe we'll all be together. Oh no, wait. Did somebody? Oh no, I thought that was another question. Maybe we'll all be together in person at some point soon. Check our calendar, because Summer Scares is going to be going on May through August. We have a lot of fun programming coming up. I think the next one in the series is Julia Fine, who wrote The Upstairs House, which is like the yellow wallpaper combined with like Shirley Jackson. Cool. Yes. Yes. And it's got like some history about Margaret Wise Brown. It's so good. So yeah, crazy. Please come to that as well, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.
Weekend.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.